It was the end of the school year, and a teacher was receiving gifts from her pupils. The florist's son handed her a wrapped gift. She gently shook it, held it overhead, and said, "I bet I know what it is. Flowers." "That's right," the boy said, "but how did you know?" "Oh, just a wild guess," she replied. The daughter of a baker presented her a gift next. Lifting it a few times, she said, "I think it's a box of cake." "That's right, but how did you know?" asked the girl. "Oh, just a wild guess," said the teacher. The next gift was from the son of the owner of the local liquor store. The teacher held the package overhead, but noticed it was leaking a clear liquid. She touched a drop of the leakage with her finger and put it to her tongue. "Is it wine?" she asked. "No," the boy replied with some excitement. The teacher repeated the process, tasting a larger drop of the leakage. "Is it champagne?" she asked. "No," the boy replied, again with even more excitement. The teacher took one more big taste before declaring, "I give up. What is it?" With great glee, the boy replied, "Surprise! It's a puppy!"
A man spoke to each of his 3 sons when he sent them off to college. "I feel it's my duty to provide you with the best possible education, and you do not owe me anything for that. However, I want you to appreciate it. As a token, please each put $1,000 into my coffin when I die." And so it happened. His sons became a doctor, a lawyer, and a financial planner, each very successful financially. When their father's time had come and they saw their father in the coffin, they remembered his wish. First, the doctor put $1,000 in 10 newly printed crisp $100 bills onto the chest of the deceased. Then the financial planner also put $1,000 there in 20 newly printed crisp $50 bills. Finally, it was the heartbroken lawyer's turn. He reached into his pocket, took out his checkbook, wrote a check for $3,000, put it into his father's coffin, and took the $2,000 cash. The lawyer is now running for Congress, possibly in your district.
At school one day, little Johnny's teacher asks the class to use the word contagious in a sentence. Cindy raises her hand. "Yes, Cindy?" She answers, "I was at the dentist's office with my mom, and she said not to play with the toys in the waiting room because the other kids were contagious." "Very good, Cindy," the teacher said. "Anyone else want to try?" Samantha raises her hand. "Yes, Samantha?" She answers, "My dad tells me not to yawn because then everybody else yawns. He says yawning is contagious." "Excellent work, Samantha. Very creative," the teacher praises. "Okay, one more volunteer." Little Johnny raises his hand. "Yes, Johnny?" "Well," he says, "I was helping my dad in the yard last week, and we saw the neighbor painting his house. He was using a small brush, so I asked my dad, 'Daddy, why is he using such a small brush?' And he said, 'I don't know, son, but it's going to take that contagiousness.'" A young man graduated from the University of Arkansas with a degree in journalism. His first assignment for the newspaper that hired him was to write a human interest story. Being from Arkansas, he went back to the country to do his research. He went to an old farmer's house way back in the hills, introduced himself to the farmer, and proceeded to explain to him why he was there. The young man asked, "Has anything ever happened around here that made you happy?" The farmer thought for a minute and said, "Yep. One time, one of my neighbor's sheep got lost. We formed a posse and found it. We all screwed it and took it back home." "I can't print that," the young man exclaimed. "Can you think of anything else that happened that made you or a lot of other people happy?" After another moment, the farmer said, "Yeah, at one time my neighbor's daughter, a good-looking girl, got lost. We formed a big posse that time and found her. After we all screwed her, we took her back home." Again, the young man said, "I can't print that either. Has anything ever happened around here that made you sad?" The old farmer dropped his head as if he were ashamed, and after a few seconds looked up timidly at the young man and said, "I got lost once." A newlywed farmer and his wife were visited by her mother, who immediately demanded an inspection of the place. While they were walking through the barn, the farmer's mule suddenly reared up and kicked the mother-in-law, unfortunately killing her instantly. At the funeral service, the farmer stood near the casket and greeted folks as they walked by. The pastor noticed that whenever a woman would whisper something to the farmer, he would nod his head yes and say something. Whenever a man walked by and whispered to the farmer, he would shake his head no and mumble a reply. Curious, the pastor later asked the farmer what that was all about. The farmer replied, "The women would say, 'What a terrible tragedy,' and I would nod my head and say, 'Yes, it was.' The men would ask, 'You want to sell that mule?' And I would shake my head and say, 'Can't, it's all booked up for a year.'"
Farmer Murphy is working on his fence when a British tourist startles him by honking his car's horn. "I say," asked the Brit, "does this road go to the castle?" "I do believe it does. Just keep on as you were." Farmer Murphy goes back to his business. About 10 minutes later, the Brit comes back up the road. "I say, my good man, there's a stream crossing this road. Is it safe to cross it in my car?" Farmer Murphy says, "Right, I should think you'll be fine." And the Brit drives off again. Farmer Murphy goes back to his business. He's working away and slowly becomes aware of a sloshing, dripping, stomping sound getting louder. He looks up. It's the Brit. He does not look happy. "I say," the Brit rants, "you told me it was safe to cross that stream." "I did that." "Well, I nearly drowned. That stream is deep enough to completely cover my car." Farmer Murphy has himself a smile and replies, "That's odd. It only comes halfway up on the ducks."
A mother and her young daughter were visiting New York City. The mother was trying to hail a cab when her daughter noticed several wildly dressed women who were loitering on a nearby street corner. The mother finally hailed her cab and they both climbed in, at which point the young daughter asked, "Mommy, what are all those ladies waiting for by that corner?" The mother replies, "Those ladies are waiting for their husbands to come by and pick them up on the way home from work." The cabbie, upon hearing this exchange, turns to the mother and says, "Ah, come on, lady, tell your daughter the truth, for crying out loud. They're hookers." A brief period of silence follows, and the daughter then asked, "Mommy, do the hooker ladies have any children?" The mother replies, "Of course, dear. Where do you think cabbies come from?" A nurse was dating a doctor and got pregnant. The married doctor begged her to keep it a secret and asked her to keep away from the public eye. 9 months later, she came to the hospital for delivery. At the same moment, a priest was admitted for having a large cyst in his prostate gland. The doctor had an idea. He sedates the priest under anesthesia and removes the cyst. When the priest wakes up, the doctor greets him with the baby and says that it was a miracle that they found a baby in his prostate. The priest, being a God-fearing man, didn't question it and took the baby home. 15 years later, after the baby had grown into a young boy, the priest decided to have a chat with him. "Tell me, father," asked the boy. "Look, son, I'm your mother," said the priest. "The archbishop is your father." There's a farmer with 3 beautiful daughters. He was always wary of them dating horrible guys, so he forbade them to date their entire teenage lives. But when they turned 18, the daughters told their father he couldn't stop them from dating anymore, and the farmer, instead of fighting with them, agreed, but under one condition. He wanted to meet their date, and if he decided he didn't like him, the farmer would shoot him with the shotgun he kept by the door. Immediately, all 3 girls find a date, and the first guy comes to pick up the first daughter. The farmer greets the guy at the door with the shotgun in his hand, and the guy says, "Hello, my name is Joe, and I'm here for Flo. Is she ready to go?" This guy seems nice enough, so the farmer lets him take his daughter out on a date. The next guy comes to the door, and the farmer again opens the door with a shotgun in hand. The guy says, "Hi, I'm here for Betty. We're gonna go get some spaghetti. Is she ready?" The farmer lets this guy through because he too seems decent. The third and final guy walks up to the door and says, "Hey, I'm Chuck," and so the farmer shoots him.
A father-to-be was waiting anxiously outside the labour ward where his wife was delivering a baby. A nurse came up to the man and said, "You have a girl, but there's another one on the way, so come back soon." Twins, he thought, a little shakily. He went away and came back an hour later to be told that the second baby had been born, but there was still another on the way. Good grief, he thought. He went to the pub down the street, and after a beer he phoned in and was told a fourth one was on the way. He started to drown his sorrows. A few stiff whiskies later he called the hospital again, but was so drunk he dialed the wrong number and got the recorded cricket score. Crying in agony, he collapsed on the floor, a poor, devastated, shuddering and weeping mess. As the barman struggled to pick him up, he heard the voice from the phone say, "The score is 88 all out, and the last one was a duck."
An atheist was outraged over all the Christmas and Hanukkah celebrations, claiming it was unfair that atheists had no holiday of their own. Determined to fight this injustice, he filed a lawsuit. In court, his lawyer delivered a fiery speech. "Your Honor, Christians have Christmas and Easter. Jews have Passover and Hanukkah, but my client, along with all other atheists, has no official holiday. This is blatant discrimination." The judge listened patiently, then banged his gavel. "Case dismissed." The lawyer jumped to his feet. "Your Honor, how can you dismiss this? Atheists deserve a holiday too." The judge leaned forward, smirking. "Your client already has a holiday. He's just too confused to celebrate it." The lawyer scoffed. "And what holiday would that be?" The judge calmly replied, "April 1st. Psalm 14:1 says, 'The fool says in his heart, there is no God.' That makes April Fool's Day your client's official holiday. Now get out of my courtroom." A young woman, heartbroken and jobless, heads to the docks in Manhattan with plans to end her life. She feels like she has nothing left, no friends, no family, and is ready to jump into the water. Just as she's about to do so, a handsome young sailor yells, "Stop! Don't do it!" She turns to him and says, "I have nothing in this world. What's the point of living?" He responds, "I understand. Life can be rough, but listen to me. Don't throw it all away without giving it a chance. I'm leaving tomorrow on a ship to Europe. I know a stevedore who can help. I'll sneak you aboard and we can start a new life. You'll make me happy and I'll make you happy. It doesn't have to end like this." She agrees, and that night they meet in secret. The sailor helps her stow away in a lifeboat below deck. He brings her food and blankets, and for 3 weeks they meet in the dark, sharing sandwiches, talking, and making passionate love each night. However, after 3 weeks, the captain comes down for a routine inspection. He hears rustling coming from one of the lifeboats and pulls back the tarp to find the woman hiding inside, trembling in fear. "What are you doing here?" he demands. She explains, "I'm a stowaway. A sailor helped me get on board, and he's been bringing me food and smuggling me into the lifeboat. He said we'd start a new life in Europe." "And?" asks the captain. She looks up nervously and says, "And, well, he's been screwing me." The captain sighs and says, "Lady, he sure is. Welcome to the Staten Island ferry."
At a crowded bus stop in the city, a beautiful young woman stood waiting for the bus. She was wearing a tight leather miniskirt, matching leather boots, and a jacket. As the bus arrived, she tried to step onto the first step, but her skirt was so tight she couldn't lift her leg high enough. Slightly embarrassed, she smiled at the bus driver, then reached behind and unzipped her skirt a little, thinking it would give her enough slack to make the step. She tried again, but still couldn't get her leg up. Feeling more embarrassed, she unzipped the skirt a little more and attempted the step again. Still no luck. She smiled coyly at the bus driver, then unzipped the skirt once more, trying again, but still couldn't manage the step. At that moment, a big Texan standing behind her picked her up by the waist and gently placed her on the step of the bus. She immediately spun around and yelled, "How dare you touch me? I don't even know who you are." The Texan, looking calm, drawled, "Well, ma'am, normally I'd agree with you, but after you unzipped my fly 3 times, I figured we were friends."
On her deathbed, the sheriff's wife confesses that she cheated on him 3 times, but swears it was always for a good reason. He asks what happened, and she says, well, the first time, remember when Dr. Smith said we couldn't afford the operation, and then he changed his mind and did it for free? He says yes, and forgives her. And the second time, do you remember when our boy got a DUI, and the judge let him off with probation? He says yes, and forgives her. And last, do you remember when the polls had you about 100 votes shy of winning the election for sheriff?
A college student wanted to sit next to one of his teachers at lunch. However, the teacher looked at the student with an arrogant face and said, "A swan shan't be friends with a pig." "Then I shall fly on," answered the student with a smile. The teacher was clearly vexed by the cheeky reply and decided to do everything in his power to fail the student. At the oral exam, he gave the student the hardest questions, but the student had amazing answers for everything. Therefore, hoping he could still fail his victim, the teacher asked him a trickier question. "You're walking on a road and you find 2 bags. One contains gold, the other cleverness. Which bag do you choose?" "The gold." "Unfortunately, I don't agree. I'd choose cleverness because that's more important than money." "Everyone would choose what they don't have," says the student. The teacher turns red and he's so angry he writes "ass" on the student's paper. The student leaves without looking at the paper. However, he returns shortly, gives back his paper and says, "Excuse me, sir, you signed my paper, but you forgot to give me my grade."
A retired man purchased a home near a high school. He spent the first few weeks of his retirement in peace. Then the new school year began. One afternoon, early into the first semester, 3 loud young boys came down his street beating merrily on every bin they came across. They then did so the following day and the day after that, until finally the retiree decided it was time to take some action. The next afternoon, he walked out to meet the boys as they banged their way down the street. Stopping them, he said, "You kids are a lot of fun. I used to do the same thing when I was your age. Will you do me a favor? I'll give you each $1 if you'll promise to come around every day and do your thing." The boys were more than happy and continued to bang the bins every day on their walk home. After a week, the old man walked out and greeted the kids again. However, this time he didn't have a smile on his face. "This recession's really putting a big dent in my income," he told them. "I'm going to have to cut it down to 50 cents a day to keep you kids banging the bins." The kids were obviously unimpressed, but they accepted the reduction in payment and continued their afternoon activities. A few days later, the man approached them again. "Look," he said, "I haven't received my retirement checks yet, so I'm not going to be able to give you more than 25 cents to bang on the bins. Will that be okay?" "That's it?" the drum leader exclaimed. "If you think we're going to waste our time beating these around for 25 cents a day, you're nuts. No way, mister. We quit." And the man enjoyed peace and serenity for the rest of his days. A farmer stopped by a hardware store and bought a bucket and a gallon of paint. Then he stopped by the feed store and picked up a couple of chickens and a goose.
However, struggling outside the store, he wondered how to carry all his purchases home. While he was scratching his head, he was approached by a lady who told him she was lost. She asked, "Can you tell me how to get to this address, please?" The farmer said, "Well, as a matter of fact, my farm is very close to that house. I would walk you there, but I can't carry this lot." The lady suggested, "Why don't you put the can of paint in the bucket, carry the bucket in one hand, put a chicken under each arm, and carry the goose in your other hand?" "Thank you very much," he said, and proceeded to walk the lady home. On the way, he said, "Let's take my shortcut and go down this alley. We'll be there in no time." The lady looked him over cautiously and said, "I am a lonely widow without a husband to protect me. How do I know that when we get in the alley, you won't hold me up against the wall, pull up my skirt, and have your way with me?" The farmer said, "Holy smokes, lady, I'm carrying a bucket, a gallon of paint, 2 chickens, and a goose. How in the world could I possibly hold you up against the wall and do that?" The lady replied, "Set the goose down, cover him with the bucket, put the paint on top of the bucket, and I'll hold the chickens."
A father puts his 3-year-old daughter to bed. His daughter wanted to say a prayer before sleeping, so the father listened. "God bless Mommy, God bless Daddy, God bless Grandma, goodbye, Grandpa." The father asked, "Why did you say goodbye, Grandpa?" The little girl said, "I don't know. It just seemed like the right thing to say." The next morning, the family received news that the grandfather had indeed died. The father thought that it was just a very lucky coincidence. A few months later, he tucked her daughter into bed, and she said a prayer. "God bless Mommy, God bless Daddy, goodbye, Grandma." And, of course, the next day, the grandmother died. The father realized that his daughter could predict the family deaths, and that this was no coincidence. A few weeks later, he tucked her daughter into bed, and her prayer went, "God bless Mommy," and "Goodbye, Daddy." Her father went into shock. He stood up all night waiting for the worst, and then sunrise came. He decided to just stay at work the entire day to be safe. He stayed at his office until midnight came. When it did, nothing happened. He breathed a sigh of relief. When he came home, his wife asked why he was home so late. "I had the worst day of my life," said the father. "If you think your day was hard, you won't believe what happened to me. My boss died in the middle of a meeting."
The principal of a small middle school had a growing problem. Some of the older girls had started using lipstick. Now, he wasn't particularly concerned about modesty or innocence, but rather the mess they were making. For some reason, after applying their lipstick in the bathroom, they had taken to pressing their lips against the mirror, leaving behind smudgy lip prints. At first, it was just a few, but before long, the mirror looked like a crime scene from CSI Makeup Edition. Before things got out of hand, the principal devised a plan. He gathered all the lipstick-wearing girls and told them to meet him in the ladies' room at 2 p.m. When they arrived, they found the principal waiting, along with the school janitor, who stood beside a bucket and a long-handled brush. The principal addressed them. "Ladies, I understand you may not realize how difficult it is to clean these mirrors every day. So I thought it would be best if you saw firsthand just how much work it takes." With that, the janitor nodded, grabbed the brush, dipped it into the nearest toilet, and began scrubbing the mirror. The girls stood frozen in horror, their faces pale, save for the perfectly applied lipstick. That was the last day anyone left lip prints on the mirror.
A teacher asked her young class to go home and ask their parents for a family story with a moral. The next day, the students took turns sharing their tales. Joe went first. "My dad is a farmer and we have chickens. One day we were taking a basket full of eggs to market when we hit a big bump in the road. The basket fell and all the eggs broke. The moral of the story is don't put all your eggs in one basket." "Very good," said the teacher. Next, Mary shared her story. "We're farmers too.
We had 20 eggs waiting to hatch, but in the end, only 10 chicks made it. The moral is, don't count your chickens before they hatch." "Excellent," the teacher said, pleased with the responses. Then it was Barney's turn. "Well," he began, "my dad told me a story about my Aunt Karen. She was a flight engineer in the war, and one day her plane got hit. She had to bail out over enemy territory with only 3 things: a bottle of whiskey, a machine gun, and a machete." The teacher raised an eyebrow, but let him continue. "On the way down, she drank the whiskey to prepare herself. She landed right in the middle of 100 enemy soldiers. She took out 70 with the machine gun before she ran out of bullets, then 20 more with the machete until the blade broke, and then she finished off the last 10 with her bare hands." The classroom fell silent. The teacher, visibly shaken, finally stammered, "And what was the moral of that story?" Barney grinned. "Stay away from Aunt Karen when she's drunk."
Sophie, a traditional Italian girl, had just married Luca. Being raised the old-fashioned way, she was still a virgin. On their wedding night, staying at her mother's house, she felt nervous. "Mama, I'm scared," she said. "Don't worry, Sophie," her mother reassured her. "Luca's a good man. Go upstairs, he'll take care of you." So up she went. When she got to the bedroom, Luca took off his shirt, revealing a thick, hairy chest. Sophie gasped and ran back downstairs. "Mama, Mama, Luca's got a big, hairy chest." Her mother smiled. "Sophie, all good men have hairy chests. Go back up. He'll take good care of you." So she went back up. Next, Luca took off his pants, exposing his hairy legs. Again, Sophie ran downstairs. "Mama, Mama, Luca's got hairy legs." Her mother sighed. "Sophie, all good men have hairy legs. Go back up. He'll take good care of you." So up she went again. This time, Luca took off his socks, revealing that he was missing 3 toes on 1 foot. Sophie's eyes widened in shock. She bolted downstairs. "Mama, Mama, Luca's got 1.5 feet." Her mother dropped the spoon in the pasta pot and stood up. "Stay here and stir the sauce," she said. "This is a job for Mama."
The principal of a small middle school had a growing problem. Some of the older girls had started using lipstick. Now, he wasn't particularly concerned about modesty or innocence, but rather the mess they were making. For some reason, after applying their lipstick in the bathroom, they had taken to pressing their lips against the mirror, leaving behind smudgy lip prints. At first, it was just a few, but before long, the mirror looked like a crime scene from CSI Makeup Edition. Before things got out of hand, the principal devised a plan. He gathered all the lipstick-wearing girls and told them to meet him in the ladies' room at 2 p.m. When they arrived, they found the principal waiting, along with the school janitor, who stood beside a bucket and a long-handled brush. The principal addressed them. "Ladies, I understand you may not realize how difficult it is to clean these mirrors every day. So I thought it would be best if you saw firsthand just how much work it takes." With that, the janitor nodded, grabbed the brush, dipped it into the nearest toilet, and began scrubbing the mirror. The girls stood frozen in horror, their faces pale, save for the perfectly applied lipstick. That was the last day anyone left lip prints on the mirror.
3 women work in the same office with the same female boss. Every day, they noticed the boss left work early. One day, the girls decided that when the boss left, they'd be right behind her. After all, she never called or came back, so how was she to know? The brunette was thrilled to be home early. She did a little gardening and went to bed early. The redhead was elated to be able to get in a quick workout at her spa before meeting a dinner date. The blonde was happy to be home, but when she got to her bedroom, she heard a muffled noise from inside. Slowly, quietly, she cracked open the door and was mortified to see her husband in bed with her boss. Ever so gently, she closed the door and crept out of her house.
The next day, at coffee break, the brunette and redhead mentioned leaving early again and asked the blonde if she was with them. "No way," she exclaimed. "I almost got caught yesterday."